The Battle of Iwo Jima, fought between February and March 1945, was one of the most intense and strategically significant battles in the Pacific theater of World War II. The Japanese military believed that no American force could conquer the island, a statement that reflected their confidence in Iwo Jima's natural defenses and the fortifications built over years of preparation. American planners, however, were determined to seize the island, to secure airfields for bombing campaigns, and to gain a critical foothold close to Japan. This chapter introduces the strategic importance of Iwo Jima, the Japanese mindset, and the daunting challenges the Marines would face. Iwo Jima was a volcanic island roughly 8 square miles in size, strategically positioned between the Mariana Islands and Japan. The island's rugged terrain, dominated by Mount Suribachi, offered natural defensive advantages. Japanese forces, anticipating an American invasion, constructed an extensive network of fortifications, bunkers, tunnels, and artillery positions. They meticulously planned to inflict maximum casualties on invading forces. Japanese leadership publicly claimed that Iwo Jima was nearly impregnable, suggesting it could take the Americans hundreds of years to take the island. Despite this, the United States Marine Corps meticulously prepared, studying Japanese tactics and designing landing strategies that would challenge the enemy's confidence in fortifications. The Americans understood that Iwo Jima was not just a tactical target, it was a psychological objective. Securing the island would demonstrate American resolve, undermine Japanese morale, and provide a crucial base for bomber operations against Japan's mainland. This battle would test every element of marine planning, from amphibious landings to close-quarters combat. In the coming chapters, we will explore how American strategy, training, bravery, and innovation overcame the seemingly insurmountable defenses of Iwo Jima in just 36 days, contrasting sharply with Japanese expectations. Iwo Jima was much more than a remote volcanic island. Its location was critical to the American air campaign against Japan. The island's airfields offered an emergency landing site for bombers returning from raids on Japanese cities. Without such a base, many damaged B-29 bombers risked crashing in the ocean, potentially costing lives and aircraft. Securing Iwo Jima also allowed American forces to launch fighter escorts closer to Japan, increasing bombing efficiency and reducing losses from Japanese interceptors. The Japanese knew the strategic value of the island, which is why they fortified it so heavily. Over 20,000 Japanese troops under the command of Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi prepared for the impending American assault. They developed a defense-in-depth strategy that relied on underground bunkers and interlocking fields of fire. The Japanese plan was not to stop the Americans at the beach, but to inflict maximum casualties and draw out the battle as long as possible, turning the island into a graveyard for invaders. American planners recognized the risks, but also saw the opportunity. Capturing Iwo Jima would not only provide a strategic airbase, but also demonstrate that even the most heavily fortified positions could be overcome with determination, planning, and courage. The battle that followed would become one of the bloodiest and most iconic engagements of the Pacific War, illustrating the extremes of human endurance, strategy, and the resolve of the Marines. The success of the Marines at Iwo Jima didn't happen by chance. Extensive planning, reconnaissance, and preparation were critical components that allowed the United States to challenge the Japanese expectations of invincibility. Months before the invasion, military strategists studied aerial photographs, Japanese defenses, and the island's treacherous terrain. The intelligence revealed a heavily fortified network of bunkers, artillery, and tunnels, and analysts knew that frontal assaults would be extremely costly. American planners approached the task with meticulous care. Amphibious landing strategies were developed that accounted for the island's rocky coastline, volcanic ash beaches, and natural obstacles. Specialized landing crafts such as LCVPs, landing craft vehicle personnel, were outfitted to bring men, tanks, and supplies directly onto the beaches. Pre-invasion bombardments were planned to soften Japanese defenses, with naval and aerial attacks targeting known fortifications. However, intelligence also indicated that the Japanese could survive heavy bombardments by retreating into their underground bunkers, making it clear that the initial assault would still be extremely dangerous. The Marines trained intensively for weeks leading up to the assault. Units practiced amphibious landings, coordinated artillery fire, and close-quarters combat to prepare for the harsh realities of fighting on an island where the Japanese were deeply entrenched. Engineers and demolition teams practiced clearing obstacles and neutralizing fortified positions, understanding that the key to advancing inland would depend on their ability to overcome these heavily defended positions. Leadership played a critical role in motivating the troops. Commanders emphasized the importance of the mission, not just as a strategic objective, but as a matter of honor, duty, and the broader goal of defeating Japan. The Marines knew they were facing one of the most challenging operations of the war. Despite the daunting odds and the propaganda spread by Japanese commanders claiming the island was impregnable, American forces remained committed to taking the island swiftly and decisively. Finally, the coordination between branches of the military, Navy, Marines, and Air Force, ensured that firepower could be delivered efficiently. Naval guns bombarded Japanese positions, and carrier-based aircraft struck critical installations. This preparation would prove essential when the Marines finally landed, as they would need all available support to survive the initial waves and push inland. The meticulous planning and preparation set the stage for what would become one of the most remarkable feats of the Pacific Campaign, challenging Japanese assumptions and demonstrating the Marines' resilience and determination. On February 19, 1945, the first waves of American Marines touched the beaches of Iwo Jima, beginning one of the most grueling battles of the Pacific theater. Despite the careful planning and pre-invasion bombardments, the Marines were met with fierce Japanese resistance. The enemy had spent years fortifying the island with hidden bunkers, interlocking fields of fire, and an extensive network of underground tunnels, making the initial landing extremely deadly. The invasion began under the cover of naval bombardment and aerial attacks, which had softened some coastal defenses. However, Japanese troops had prepared well, with many soldiers surviving the pre-landing bombardments by retreating into deep bunkers. As the first Marines approached the shore, they faced heavy machine gun fire, artillery shells, and obstacles designed to impede landing craft. The volcanic ash beaches slowed movement, causing soldiers to sink waist-deep in some areas, which made them easy targets for the defenders. Despite these obstacles, the Marines pressed forward. Landing crafts delivered waves of troops, each group advancing under heavy fire to secure footholds on the beaches. Flamethrowers, grenades, and demolition charges were used to eliminate bunkers and pillboxes, but progress was slow and costly. Many Marines fell during the first hours of combat, but their determination and coordination allowed the units to establish beachheads. The first day's fighting demonstrated both the Japanese defensive ingenuity and the Marines' resilience. Japanese forces employed a strategy that emphasized attrition, intending to kill as many attackers as possible before they could advance inland. They relied on underground tunnels to move troops unseen and counterattack vulnerable positions. However, the Marines adapted quickly, using intelligence and coordination to neutralize key defensive points. Units focused on systematically clearing bunkers, while artillery and naval gunfire provided cover for advancing troops. The psychological impact of the landing was profound. While Japanese leaders had publicly claimed that Americans could never conquer Iwo Jima, the Marines were steadily pushing forward despite heavy casualties. By the end of the first day, they had secured critical portions of the beach, but still faced the daunting task of advancing inland toward Mount Suribachi, the island's strategic high point. The initial landings set the tone for the battle, showcasing both the ferocity of Japanese defenses and the determination and bravery of the American Marines. After securing the beaches during the initial landings, the Marines turned their focus toward Mount Suribachi, the volcanic peak dominating the southern end of Iwo Jima. Capturing this strategic high ground was essential because it allowed the Japanese to control the entire southern portion of the island and to fire upon American positions, making further inland advances extremely dangerous. Mount Suribachi was heavily fortified with caves, bunkers, and machine gun nests, making it a formidable obstacle for the Marines. The Japanese defenders were determined to hold the mountain at all costs. Under the leadership of Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, they had prepared complex tunnel networks that allowed soldiers to move unseen, launch ambushes, and retreat to safety. Artillery and mortars were positioned to cover likely approaches, and Japanese soldiers were trained to fight to the death. This meant that even small groups of Marines advancing toward the peak faced heavy casualties from well-placed defensive fire. American forces responded by coordinating infantry assaults with tanks, flamethrowers, and naval gunfire support. Tanks equipped with flamethrowers were particularly effective at clearing bunkers and caves, neutralizing positions that were otherwise impregnable. Engineers used explosives to collapse tunnel entrances, and infantry units systematically cleared each fortified area. Progress was slow, with every advance measured in yards rather than miles, and the cost in human life was staggering. Despite the difficulty, the Marines maintained pressure. The psychological toll on both sides was immense. For the Japanese, seeing the relentless advance of the Americans despite heavy casualties was demoralizing. For the Marines, witnessing comrades fall while pushing uphill under constant fire tested courage and resolve. Yet their training, discipline, and determination allowed them to steadily gain ground. By the end of the first week of fighting, Marines had reached the base of Suribachi and begun coordinated attacks to capture the summit. The eventual raising of the American flag on February 23, 1945, symbolized not just the capture of the mountain, but a major turning point in the battle. Though fierce fighting would continue across the rest of the island for weeks, securing Mount Suribachi boosted American morale and demonstrated the ability of well-coordinated, determined forces to overcome what the Japanese considered an impregnable position. The battle for Mount Suribachi exemplified the brutality, ingenuity, and determination that defined the campaign on Iwo Jima. It highlighted the importance of combined arms coordination and set the stage for the Marines' continued push across the island, ultimately challenging Japanese assumptions about American capabilities. As the battle for Iwo Jima progressed, the Marines experienced the brutal realities of prolonged combat. The island's terrain, composed of volcanic ash, rocky outcrops, and narrow ridges, made movement exhausting and dangerous. Every advance came at a high cost, with Japanese defenders utilizing every natural and man-made advantage to inflict maximum casualties. Fighting often involved crawling through narrow tunnels, clearing bunkers, and engaging in close-quarters combat, making each encounter deadly. The Marines faced constant artillery, sniper, and mortar fire, which created a climate of continuous stress and fear. The Japanese had mastered the art of concealment, hiding in tunnels during bombardments and emerging to counterattack. This guerrilla-style defense meant that the Americans could rarely predict where enemy fire would come from, and even secured positions could suddenly come under assault. The psychological strain was immense, as soldiers were forced to operate in a state of near constant vigilance for days or weeks at a time. Supplies and reinforcements had to be carefully coordinated under fire. Amphibious landing crafts and supply boats brought in ammunition, food, and medical supplies, but the beaches were under regular attack from Japanese artillery, making resupply missions hazardous. Field hospitals were overwhelmed with casualties, and medics worked tirelessly under fire to treat the wounded. Despite these challenges, the Marines demonstrated resilience and adaptability, frequently improvising solutions to navigate the island's deadly terrain. The toll on human life was staggering. By the midpoint of the battle, thousands of Marines had been killed or wounded. Every inch of progress cost blood, yet the determination to capture the island never wavered. Letters and diaries from soldiers reveal a mix of fear, determination, and camaraderie, highlighting the emotional strain of sustained combat. Many Marines described the fight as unlike anything they had encountered in previous battles, emphasizing the intensity of Japanese resistance and the psychological pressure of constant danger. The battle also underscored the importance of teamwork and coordination. Small units often had to clear bunkers together, relying on precise communication and mutual trust. Flamethrowers, grenades, and coordinated infantry maneuvers proved crucial in slowly but steadily overcoming the enemy. Ultimately, life in the trenches of Iwo Jima highlighted both the physical and psychological challenges of one of the war's most brutal battles. The Marines' ability to endure these conditions, adapt to unforeseen threats, and maintain cohesion under extreme stress was key to the eventual American victory, challenging Japanese assumptions of invincibility.
One of the critical factors that allowed the Marines to succeed at Iwo Jima was the combined support of the U.S. Navy and Air Force. While the Marines bore the brunt of the fighting on the beaches and inland, the effectiveness of their assaults relied heavily on coordinated bombardments, aerial strikes, and artillery fire. This combined arms approach was essential for neutralizing Japanese defenses, many of which were deeply entrenched and nearly impervious to small-scale attacks. Before the initial landing, pre-invasion bombardments targeted known fortifications, artillery positions, and tunnels. Navy battleships and cruisers fired hundreds of tons of shells at the island, while aircraft conducted precision strikes to soften the defenses. Despite these efforts, Japanese troops had engineered extensive underground bunkers and tunnels, allowing many defenders to survive the bombardment and emerge to fight. Nevertheless, the preliminary strikes disrupted enemy positions, reduced their capacity for coordinated defense, and provided the Marines with critical openings during the initial landings. During the battle itself, naval gunfire remained a constant support element. Battleships stationed offshore provided continuous artillery fire, capable of targeting Japanese strongpoints that were otherwise difficult to reach. These massive guns could fire high-explosive shells with devastating effect, breaking apart bunkers and craters that would otherwise slow the Marine advance. Fire coordination teams on the island relayed real-time information to the ships, ensuring that artillery fire was accurate and minimized the risk to friendly forces. Air support was equally crucial. Carrier-based aircraft conducted bombing runs, strafing enemy positions, and eliminating artillery crews attempting to target advancing Marines. The fighter bombers also provided cover, suppressing Japanese counterattacks and reducing the overall risk to infantry units. Additionally, reconnaissance flights helped identify strongpoints, tunnel entrances, and troop movements, enabling Marine commanders to adjust strategies dynamically. The integration of naval and air power with infantry operations allowed the Marines to gradually push through heavily defended areas. While progress remained slow and casualties were high, the ability to call on precise and overwhelming firepower made it possible to neutralize enemy positions systematically. This coordination also demonstrated the importance of joint operations in modern warfare, where success often depended on the seamless integration of multiple branches of the military. Ultimately, the support provided by the Navy and Air Force was indispensable. Without the combination of pre-invasion bombardments, continuous artillery support, and aerial strikes, the Marines' advance would have been significantly slower and casualties even higher. This chapter highlights the vital interplay of firepower and strategy that enabled the Americans to challenge the seemingly impregnable defenses of Iwo Jima.
Japanese defenders at Iwo Jima employed a unique and deadly set of tactics designed to maximize American casualties and prolong the battle. Unlike previous Pacific Island battles, the Japanese strategy on Iwo Jima relied heavily on defense in depth rather than immediate resistance at the shoreline. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, the island's commander, understood that a frontal beach defense would fail against overwhelming American naval and air superiority. Instead, he crafted a plan focused on underground fortifications, hidden bunkers, and interlocking fields of fire, making the Marines' advance painfully slow and costly. One of the key elements of Japanese tactics was the extensive use of tunnel networks. These tunnels connected bunkers, machine gun nests, artillery positions, and living quarters, allowing Japanese soldiers to move unseen, regroup, and launch counterattacks with precision. They could survive heavy naval bombardments by retreating underground, emerging later to ambush advancing Marines. This underground strategy forced the Americans to adapt, often requiring flamethrowers, explosives, and coordinated assaults to clear positions that seemed impregnable from the surface. The Japanese also made effective use of snipers and artillery fire, targeting officers and heavy equipment to disrupt command and slow the advance. Every ridge and crater became a potential kill zone. Even when American forces secured one position, the defenders could retreat and fortify another, creating a grinding cycle of combat that exhausted both personnel and resources. The intent was clear. Attrition, not outright victory, would weaken the Marines and make the island as costly as possible to capture. Despite these deadly tactics, the Marines adapted quickly. Units learned to work in close coordination, employing combined arms strategies that leveraged naval gunfire, airstrikes, and infantry tactics simultaneously. Small groups of Marines would systematically advance, supported by flamethrower teams to neutralize bunkers and engineers to collapse tunnels. Leadership emphasized flexibility, patience, and teamwork, recognizing that rigid strategies could result in devastating casualties. The American forces also innovated in response to Japanese tactics. Specialized equipment, such as portable flamethrowers mounted on tanks and demolition charges, became critical for overcoming entrenched positions. Intelligence from captured positions and aerial reconnaissance allowed commanders to anticipate counterattacks and adjust tactics dynamically. Ultimately, the battle showcased the battle of wits and resilience between two highly trained forces. While the Japanese relied on clever defensive strategies, the Marines' ability to adapt, coordinate, and endure allowed them to gradually dismantle the carefully prepared defenses. Iwo Jima became a stark example of how preparation, ingenuity, and relentless determination can overcome even the most sophisticated defensive tactics. The Battle of Iwo Jima is remembered not only for its strategic significance, but also for the tremendous human cost incurred on both sides. The Japanese defenders fought with extraordinary determination, often choosing death over surrender. Similarly, the Marines faced a grueling combat environment, with relentless artillery, sniper fire, and booby traps that made every advance costly. The statistics alone illustrate the severity. Out of approximately 21,000 Japanese soldiers, nearly all were killed, with only a few taken prisoner. American forces suffered over 6,800 killed and nearly 19,000 wounded, a sobering reminder of the price of victory. The human cost was not just in numbers, it was deeply personal. Letters, diaries, and first-hand accounts from Marines reveal the daily psychological strain of the battle. Soldiers endured extreme stress, fear, and exhaustion while witnessing the loss of comrades in close-quarters combat. The volcanic ash made movement exhausting, and the constant threat of hidden bunkers and tunnels meant that no area was truly safe. Marines were often forced to advance slowly, clearing every bunker, trench, and cave, fully aware that enemy soldiers waited to ambush them. For the Japanese defenders, the choice was similarly grim.
Under Kurabayashi's command, surrender was forbidden, and soldiers were expected to fight to the death. This created an environment where the only acceptable outcome was complete resistance, reinforcing a culture of extreme sacrifice. The psychological pressure to maintain unwavering defense, even in the face of inevitable defeat, contributed to the extraordinary casualties suffered by Japanese forces. Despite the staggering losses, the Marines' perseverance ultimately paid off. Each advance, no matter how costly, brought them closer to securing Iwo Jima, capturing key positions such as Mount Suribachi and eventually achieving complete control of the island. The victory came at a high price, but it was instrumental in securing a strategic foothold for operations against Japan's mainland. The battle also became a symbol of courage, resilience, and determination. The iconic raising of the American flag on Mount Suribachi captured the spirit of perseverance amid unimaginable hardship. It represented not only a tactical victory, but also a testament to the human capacity to endure and prevail in the face of overwhelming adversity. Iwo Jima serves as a lasting reminder of the sacrifices required to achieve victory in war, highlighting both the heroism and the profound cost associated with such campaigns.
The Battle of Iwo Jima left a profound legacy, both strategically and culturally, cementing its place as one of the most significant and iconic battles of World War II. Though the island is small, just 8 square miles, its capture had far-reaching implications. Strategically, controlling Iwo Jima provided the United States with airfields critical for B-29 bombers targeting the Japanese mainland. The island also allowed for fighter escorts, reducing bomber losses and increasing the effectiveness of air raids, ultimately hastening the end of the Pacific War. The legacy of Iwo Jima extends beyond its military significance. The extraordinary courage and sacrifice displayed by both American Marines and Japanese defenders has been immortalized in history, literature, and art. The raising of the American flag on Mount Suribachi, captured in Joe Rosenthal's famous photograph, became an enduring symbol of bravery, determination, and victory against overwhelming odds. This single image encapsulated the perseverance of the Marines and inspired countless generations, both within the military and among civilians. The battle also underscored the importance of adaptability, planning, and joint operations in modern warfare. The success of the invasion relied on precise coordination between infantry, naval bombardments, artillery, and air support. The Americans' ability to overcome entrenched defenses highlighted the value of intelligence, preparation, and innovation, lessons that continue to influence military strategy today. Conversely, the Japanese defense demonstrated the effectiveness of fortifications, underground networks, and attritional tactics, shaping future military planning for defensive operations. Iwo Jima's legacy is also reflected in the human stories of resilience, heroism, and tragedy. Thousands of Marines endured intense combat under extreme conditions, while Japanese soldiers demonstrated extraordinary dedication, often fighting to the death. The high casualty rate serves as a reminder of the enormous sacrifices required in warfare and the human cost of achieving strategic objectives. Memorials on the island, such as the Iwo Jima Memorial in Arlington, Virginia, honor those who fought and died, preserving their stories for posterity. Finally, Iwo Jima stands as a testament to the ability of determined forces to challenge expectations and achieve the seemingly impossible. Despite Japanese confidence that Americans could never conquer the island, the Marines achieved victory in just 36 days, demonstrating courage, coordination, and relentless resolve. The battle continues to teach lessons about strategy, sacrifice, and perseverance, and its legacy remains a powerful symbol of both the horrors of war and the triumph of human determination.